Dennis Martin was never found. No remains have ever been recovered. His case remains one of the most haunting unsolved disappearances in national park history. Visitors still hike through Spence Field today. Families still camp. Children still run and laugh under those same trees. But sometimes, when fog settles low over the ridgeline and the forest becomes unnaturally quiet, longtime hikers say the air feels different there. Not threatening, just unresolved. Like something interrupted. Like a question that was never answered. A 6-year-old boy walked into the tree line for a harmless game, and the Smoky Mountains never gave him back. On Father's Day, 1969, a 6-year-old boy disappeared in one of the most visited national parks in the United States. He was laughing only seconds before he vanished. There was no scream, no struggle, no sound of running footsteps, just silence. And in the decades since that afternoon in the Great Smoky Mountains, no one has ever been able to explain what truly happened. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park stretches across Tennessee and North Carolina, a vast ocean of forested ridges and mist-covered valleys. It is breathtaking. Millions of tourists visit every year. Families camp. Children explore. Fathers teach sons how to hike. On June 14, 1969, the Martin family from Knoxville, Tennessee, arrived at the park to celebrate Father's Day weekend. Dennis Martin was 6 years old, energetic, playful, the kind of child who loved harmless pranks and hide and seek. The family set up camp near Spence Field, a grassy clearing along the Appalachian Trail. It wasn't remote by wilderness standards, but it wasn't crowded either. Trees surrounded the field in thick, layered walls of green. The forest floor dropped into dense undergrowth only yards beyond the clearing. Dennis had made friends with 2 other young boys camping nearby. According to reports, the 3 of them decided to play a game. They would sneak through the woods and surprise the adults. It was innocent, playful. Dennis's father, William Martin, later told investigators that the plan was simple. The boys would circle through the trees and jump out laughing. 2 boys ran out of the forest moments later. Dennis did not. At first, no one panicked. It had been less than a minute. William called out his son's name. No response. He walked toward the tree line, expecting Dennis to burst out giggling. Nothing. The silence of the forest began to feel different. Heavy. Absorbing. Within minutes, the adults were searching the immediate area. They combed through the bushes. They shouted. Other campers joined in. Still nothing. Dennis had been wearing a red shirt, something that should have stood out vividly against green foliage. But as the minutes stretched into an hour, a creeping realization settled in. He was truly gone. Park rangers were alerted quickly. By nightfall, search teams began assembling. Over the next several days, one of the largest search operations in National Park Service history unfolded. More than 1,400 searchers, Green Berets from nearby Fort Bragg, helicopters scanning ridgelines, bloodhounds, tracking teams. They searched ravines, creeks, dense brush. They mapped every possible direction a 6-year-old could have traveled in minutes. No clothing was found, no footprints, no scent trail that led anywhere definitive. One bloodhound reportedly picked up a scent that led downhill toward a stream and then abruptly stopped, as if the trail simply ended. Then something else surfaced. A family camping nearby reported seeing a rough-looking man in the area earlier that day, described as unkempt and possibly attempting to avoid attention. One account claimed the man had been carrying something bulky over his shoulder while moving quickly through the forest shortly after Dennis vanished. The FBI became involved, but descriptions were inconsistent. Leads dissolved. The man was never conclusively identified. Search efforts continued for nearly 2 weeks. Temperatures fluctuated. Rain moved in. The terrain was unforgiving: steep slopes, dense thickets, hidden drop-offs. Experts later argued that even if Dennis had run blindly, searchers should have found something. A body, clothing, bones, anything. But there was nothing. Years later, theories emerged. Some believed he wandered off and succumbed to the elements in terrain searchers somehow missed. Others suspected abduction. A few speculated about wild animals, though no evidence of attack was ever discovered. The most unsettling detail? Spence Field is not an isolated wasteland. It's a relatively open, grassy area surrounded by forest, but not miles of impenetrable jungle. Dennis disappeared in daylight, within seconds, in proximity to adults. And yet, despite massive search efforts, it was as if the mountains swallowed him whole. Based on documented disappearance of Dennis Martin, June 14, 1969. Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Sources: National Park Service records, FBI involvement archives, contemporary news reports, case analyses, and outdoor investigative publications. The official search ended after nearly 2 weeks, but for Dennis Martin's father, the search never truly stopped. When the National Park Service officially scaled down operations, it wasn't because they believed the mystery had been solved. It was because they had exhausted what could realistically be done. Over 14 days, the terrain surrounding Spence Field had been grid searched repeatedly. Hundreds of miles were covered on foot. Helicopters traced ridgelines from above. Even specialized tracking units trained for wilderness recovery found nothing definitive. And that nothing became the most disturbing detail of all. Experienced outdoorsmen later reviewed the search data and noted something unusual. A child of 6, especially one unfamiliar with rugged backcountry terrain, does not move efficiently through steep Appalachian forest. The undergrowth alone would slow him dramatically. Briars, roots, uneven rock faces, sudden drop-offs, all obstacles for a small child. Within minutes, he should have become tired or disoriented. Statistically, lost children are often found within a predictable radius of their last known location. Dennis was not. Search teams pushed further than standard radius expectations. They descended into ravines. They checked caves. They followed streams downstream in case he had fallen and been carried. Still nothing. No torn fabric. No shoe prints confirmed to be his. No remains scattered by wildlife. The bloodhound's sudden loss of scent near the stream continued to trouble investigators. Tracking dogs are not perfect, but they rarely lose a trail without environmental interference. One theory suggested Dennis may have entered the water, which can disrupt scent trails. But if he had, why no sign of a fall? No disturbed rocks? No slip marks? Another detail rarely discussed in headlines, but documented in investigative notes, involved weather conditions. The day Dennis vanished, the temperature was mild, visibility clear. There was no heavy rain to erase footprints, no sudden storm to disorient him, just ordinary daylight. Then there was the reported rough-looking man. Witness descriptions varied slightly, but several campers recalled seeing a disheveled individual in the area. One account described the man as moving quickly through brush, avoiding eye contact, carrying something over his shoulder. However, memory in high-stress situations can distort details. No physical evidence tied this man to Dennis. The FBI pursued the lead, but found no concrete suspect. In the absence of proof, the theory remained speculative. Years later, the case was quietly referenced in discussions of unexplained disappearances in wilderness areas. Not as proof of anything paranormal, not as evidence of conspiracy, simply as a case where standard explanations never fully aligned with the facts. For the Martin family, life split into two timelines: before June 14, 1969, and after. William Martin returned to the Smoky Mountains multiple times in the years that followed. He walked trails near Spence Field. He studied terrain. He tried to imagine how his son might have moved through those woods. Parents who lose children often wrestle with a single, repeating question. What did he feel in those final moments? Was Dennis frightened immediately? Or did he believe it was still a game? Did he try to call out and realize too late that no one could hear him? Did he follow something deeper into the trees, thinking he was circling back toward camp? The forest offers no answers. One ranger later commented in an interview that the Smokies can create strange acoustics. Sound doesn't always travel the way you expect. You can shout and be unheard just a short distance away if terrain and foliage absorb it correctly. That possibility lingers. That perhaps Dennis did call out, and no one heard. Over time, public attention shifted. Other headlines replaced his. But within national park records, his file remains open. Because until remains are found, a disappearance is not technically closed. It is suspended, frozen in uncertainty. Today, hikers who pass through Spence Field often have no idea they are walking across one of the most haunting, unsolved cases in park history. Children still run through the grass. Families still take photographs against the same ridgelines. But those who know the story sometimes describe a subtle unease when the fog rolls in. The Appalachian mist has a way of swallowing distance. One moment you see tree trunks clearly. The next, shapes blur. Depth perception shifts. And it doesn't take much imagination to realize how quickly a child could step beyond visibility. Not miles, not hours, just seconds. Dennis Martin vanished within what witnesses described as less than a minute. No scream, no struggle, no confirmed abductor, no remains. In one of the most visited national parks in America, during broad daylight, surrounded by adults, a 6-year-old boy disappeared so completely that over 5 decades later, there is still no physical trace of him. The mountains have endured storms, wildfires, generations of hikers. But they have never given up the answer. And sometimes, the most terrifying part of a documented case is not what might have happened. It's the silence that follows. Case: Dennis Martin. Date: June 14, 1969. Location: Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Sources: National Park Service Archives, FBI involvement records, contemporary newspaper coverage, documented search reports.